The dusty street of La Junta, Colorado blazed under the relentless August sun of 1882, and Josephine Palmer felt every one of her 33 years settle into her bones as she carried another basket of laundry down Main Street. The whispers followed her like tumbleweeds on the wind, rolling from one storefront to the next, the same tired refrain she had heard for nearly a decade now. Too old, set in her ways, missed her chance. The words might as well have been carved into the wooden boardwalk beneath her feet for all the permanence they carried in this small cattle town, where everyone knew everyone else's business, and most people seemed to think hers was finished before it had truly begun. She pushed through the door of the general store, setting the basket on the counter with more force than necessary. Martha Henderson looked up from her ledger, her eyebrows rising above her spectacles in that knowing way that always made Josephine want to scream. "Afternoon, Josephine." "Hot one today," Martha said, her voice carrying that particular tone of pity that made Josephine's jaw clench. "It is August in Colorado, Martha. They tend to be hot." Josephine pulled out her delivery receipt, smoothing it flat on the counter. "That is $3 for the laundry services this week." Martha counted out the coins slowly, her fingers lingering on each one as if reluctant to part with them. "You know, my cousin's boy is coming to town next month. He is a bit younger, but he has a good head on his shoulders and is not particular about certain things. I could arrange an introduction if you would like." Josephine felt heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the summer temperature. "I appreciate the thought, Martha, but I am quite content as I am. Now, Josephine, you cannot be content washing other people's clothes for the rest of your days. You need someone to take care of you. A woman your age should not be alone. I am 33, not 93. And I take care of myself just fine." Josephine snatched up the coins and dropped them into her small leather purse. "Good day, Martha." She swept out of the store before Martha could offer any more unsolicited advice or unsuitable young men. The afternoon heat hit her like a physical wall, but she welcomed it. At least the sun did not judge her or find her lacking. Josephine had not always been the object of the town's collective pity. Once, she had been young and full of promise, the daughter of a successful freight merchant with prospects aplenty. Then her father had died suddenly when she was 24, leaving debts no one had known about. Her mother had followed him within a year, grief taking her as surely as any illness. Josephine had been left with nothing but the small house on the edge of town, and her ability to work. She had turned down 3 marriage proposals in her early 20s, believing she had time to find real love rather than mere convenience. Then the years had slipped past like water through her fingers, and suddenly she was 28, then 30, and the proposals had stopped coming entirely. The younger women married off one by one, and Josephine became the cautionary tale mothers told their daughters: "Do not be too particular. Do not wait too long. Do not end up like poor Josephine Palmer." The laundry business kept her fed and clothed, but it was hard work that left her hands red and raw. She took in mending too, sitting by lamplight most evenings, squinting at tiny stitches until her eyes watered. It was not the life she had imagined for herself, but it was hers, and she had learned to take a certain pride in her independence even as the town pitied her for it. Josephine was halfway home when she noticed the commotion at the far end of Main Street. A small crowd had gathered near the livery stable, and she could hear raised voices carrying on the afternoon air. Her curiosity got the better of her caution, and she altered her path to investigate. A magnificent silver horse stood in the middle of the street, and on its back sat a man who looked like he had been carved from the same weathered stone as the mountains to the west. His hair was silver too, thick, and swept back from a face that might have been anywhere from 40 to 60, with deep lines around his eyes and mouth that spoke of a life lived outdoors. He wore a well-made black vest over a crisp white shirt, and there was something about the way he sat in the saddle, completely at ease despite the commotion around him, that drew the eye and held it. "I am telling you that water rights case was settled 5 years ago," Mayor Hoskins was saying, his face red and his voice pitched high with agitation. "You have no claim to that land." The silver-haired man's voice, when he spoke, was low and measured, with the hint of a Texas drawl. "I have the deed right here, bought legal and proper from Thomas Murphy 3 months ago. Now, if Murphy did not have the right to sell, that is between you and him, but I paid good money for that ranch, and I intend to work it. That land has been disputed for years. Half a dozen people have tried to claim it, and every one of them has been run off. The Cattlemen's Association will not stand for some stranger waltzing in here thinking he can just take what he wants." The stranger's expression did not change, but something in his eyes hardened. "I do not waltz, Mayor. I bought land fair and square, and I have got the papers to prove it. Now, if someone has a legal claim that supersedes mine, they can take it up with a judge. Otherwise, I would appreciate it if you would point me toward my property so I can get settled before dark." Mayor Hoskins sputtered, but there was not much he could say to that. The crowd began to disperse, muttering among themselves. Josephine found herself still standing there as the stranger dismounted, his movements fluid despite what she now guessed must be at least 45 years of age. He tied his horse to the hitching post outside the saloon and turned, his eyes scanning the street until they landed on her. For a moment, their gazes locked, and Josephine felt something shift in her chest, like a door opening that she had thought was sealed shut. He touched the brim of his hat in a polite gesture, and she nodded back before hurrying away, her heart beating faster than it had in years. She was being ridiculous. He was a stranger, just passing through or about to get himself run out of town like all the others who had tried to claim that cursed piece of land. It did not matter that his eyes were the color of storm clouds, or that his voice had sent a pleasant shiver down her spine. Josephine Palmer was too old for such foolishness, or so the town kept telling her. That evening, as she sat mending a torn shirt by lamplight, she could not stop thinking about the silver-haired stranger. There had been something in his bearing, a quiet strength that suggested he would not be easily run off like the others. She wondered what had brought him to La Junta, what made a man of his age start over in a new place with disputed land and unfriendly neighbors. The next morning brought more laundry deliveries, including a new order that made her eyebrows rise. Nathan Kelly was the name on the order form that young Timothy brought from the hotel, along with a pile of trailed, dusty clothes that needed washing. The silver-haired stranger had a name now, and apparently he was planning to stay long enough to need clean clothes. Josephine took the bundle to her small yard behind the house, where she had set up her washing station. The work was familiar, almost meditative, and she let her mind wander as she scrubbed and rinsed. She had been doing this long enough to learn things about people from their laundry. Nathan Kelly, she discovered, was a tidy man who took care of his things. His shirts were quality but worn from years of use, mended in places with careful stitches that suggested he had done the work himself. There was something lonely about that, a man traveling alone and mending his own clothes. She was hanging the last shirt on the line when she heard boots on the path leading around her house. She turned to find Nathan Kelly himself standing at the edge of her yard, hat in hand, looking somewhat apologetic. "Madam, I hope I am not intruding. The boy at the hotel said you did laundry services, and I wanted to ask if you might have time to mend a few things for me as well. He said you were the best hand with a needle in town, Up close, Nathan Kelly was even more striking than he had been from a distance. His eyes were indeed gray, the color of an approaching storm, and there were small lines at their corners that deepened when he gave her a tentative smile. His silver hair was thick and well kept, and she revised her estimate of his age downward slightly. Perhaps 45 at most, though it was hard to tell with men who worked outdoors. "I do take mending work, Mr. Kelly. You can leave whatever needs repairing, and I will have it ready in a few days." "I appreciate that, madam, and please call me Nathan." Mr. Kelly makes me feel like I should be sitting in some fancy office instead of trying to wrestle a ranch into submission. He pulled a small bundle from his saddlebag. It is mostly buttons and a tear in a coat, nothing too complicated. Josephine took the bundle, careful not to let their fingers touch. "I am Josephine Palmer. Most people call me Josephine. Miss Palmer, then, I appreciate your help. I have not had much luck finding a friendly face in this town so far." There was no bitterness in his voice, just a statement of fact. The town can be wary of strangers, especially ones claiming disputed land. You are not the first to try, and the others did not fare well. Nathan put his hat back on, adjusting it with a practiced gesture. "So I have heard. But I did my research before I bought that land. The water rights case was settled in favor of the Murphy family 5 years ago, just like I told the mayor. Thomas Murphy had every right to sell to me. The Cattlemen's Association just does not like it because it means someone else gets access to Miller Creek. Miller Creek is the best water source for 20 miles. Half the ranches in the area depend on it. And they can keep depending on it, far as I am concerned. The creek runs right through the middle of the property. There is plenty of water for everyone if folks are reasonable about it." He paused, studying her face. "You think I am a fool for coming here?" Josephine considered lying, then decided against it. "I think you are either very brave or very stubborn, possibly both." That earned her a real smile, and it transformed his face, making him look younger and more approachable. "My late wife used to say I was the most stubborn man in Texas. I suppose coming all the way to Colorado to prove her right even after she is gone is fitting. I am sorry for your loss. It has been 3 years. Cancer took her, slow and mean. We had a good 20 years together, though, more than some folks get." His expression grew distant for a moment, then refocused on her. "Anyway, I should let you get back to your work. Thank you for taking on the mending. I will stop by in a few days to collect it." After he left, Josephine found herself staring at the bundle of clothes in her hands, her heart doing strange things in her chest. Nathan Kelly was a widower, still grieving his wife after 3 years. He had loved deeply and lost, and now he was trying to start fresh in a hostile town with nothing but determination and a legal deed to protect him. She should not be thinking about him this way. She barely knew the man. But there was something about him that called to her, a recognition of kindred spirits, perhaps. They were both alone, both trying to make their way in a world that did not always make it easy. The next few days passed in their usual routine of washing, mending, and deliveries. But Josephine found herself looking up every time she heard boots on the boardwalk, hoping to catch a glimpse of silver hair and a black vest. She heard the gossip, of course. Nathan had ridden out to his property and started making repairs to the old ranch house. He had hired 2 men from the next town over to help him, paying fair wages. He had been to the land office and confirmed his ownership papers were all in order. The Cattlemen's Association was meeting to discuss what to do about him. On the 4th day after their first meeting, Nathan came to collect his mending. Josephine had the bundle ready, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. She had taken extra care with the stitches, making them smaller and neater than usual, though she could not have said why it mattered. "This is fine work, Miss Palmer. My wife would have been impressed, and she was a hard woman to impress when it came to needlework." Nathan counted out coins into her hand, adding an extra $1. "That is for the quality and the quick turnaround. That is too much." "It is exactly what good work is worth. I learned a long time ago that you get what you pay for, and I would rather pay fair and get quality than pinch pennies and end up with shoddy goods." He hefted the bundle under one arm. "I do not suppose you would know where a man could get a decent meal in this town. The hotel dining room serves food that is edible but not much more." Josephine hesitated. She should not. The town already talked about her enough. But there was something in his eyes, a loneliness that matched her own, that made her throw caution to the wind. "There is a widow woman, Mrs. Chen, who runs a boarding house on 2nd Street. She serves meals to non-residents for a reasonable price, and her cooking is the best in town. Tell her I sent you, Mrs. Chen. I will do that. Thank you, Miss Palmer." He tipped his hat and turned to leave, then paused. "I do not suppose you ever take your meals there. It would be nice to have some company, someone who does not look at me like I am about to steal the silver." Her heart kicked in her chest. "I do sometimes, usually on Sundays after church. Then perhaps I will see you there this Sunday, if you do not mind the company of a stubborn old rancher, that is." "You are not that old," Josephine said before she could stop herself, then felt heat flood her cheeks. Nathan's smile was warm and genuine. "Well, Miss Palmer, you just made my whole day considerably brighter. I will see you Sunday." After he left, Josephine stood in her doorway, pressing her cool hands to her hot cheeks. What was she doing? Agreeing to share a meal with a man she barely knew, a man the town already viewed with suspicion. The gossips would have a field day. But beneath her concern, there was a flutter of something she had not felt in years. Anticipation. Hope. The sense that maybe, just maybe, her story was not finished after all. Sunday morning dawned clear and beautiful, and Josephine took more care than usual with her appearance. She wore her best dress, a deep blue cotton that brought out her eyes, and pinned her dark hair up in a style that was neat but not severe. She looked at herself in the small mirror above her washstand and saw a woman of 33 with a few lines around her eyes and mouth, but also clear skin, bright eyes, and a figure that hard work had kept trim. Not a girl anymore, but not the old maid the town made her out to be either. Church was the usual affair, with the usual people sitting in the usual places. Josephine took her customary spot near the back, alone as always. She tried to focus on Reverend Thompson's sermon about patience and faith, but her mind kept wandering to the meal that would come after. Would Nathan actually be there? Had he meant the invitation, or was he just being polite? When the service ended, she made her way to Mrs. Chen's boarding house, a neat white building with a wraparound porch and flower boxes in the windows. The smell of roasting chicken and fresh bread hit her as soon as she walked through the door, making her stomach growl. "Josephine, I saved your favorite table by the window," Mrs. Chen called from the kitchen doorway. She was a small, energetic woman who had come to La Junta with her late husband 20 years ago to work on the railroad. When he had died in a construction accident, she had used the settlement money to buy the boarding house and had been running it successfully ever since. She was one of the few people in town who had never pitied Josephine or made her feel less than. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. I have brought you a new customer, or he should be along shortly. Nathan Kelly. He is the man who bought the old Murphy Ranch." Mrs. Chen's eyes lit up with interest. "Ah, yes. I have heard about him. The town is talking. They say he will be run off within a month. They say a lot of things. That they do. Well, any friend of yours is welcome at my table. Come sit. I will bring you tea while you wait." Josephine had just settled at the small table by the window when she saw Nathan walking up the path. He had dressed for church too, she noted, in a dark suit that was well made and well fitted, his silver hair combed back neatly. He looked distinguished and handsome, and several heads turned as he passed the other boarding houses on the street. He spotted her through the window, and his face brightened in a way that made her heart skip. A moment later, he was being ushered inside by Mrs. Chen, who gave Josephine a knowing look that she pretended not to see. "Miss Palmer, you look lovely this morning," Nathan said as he took the seat across from her. "Thank you for the recommendation. This place smells wonderful. Mrs. Chen is the best cook in 3 counties. You will not be disappointed." They ordered the Sunday special, and soon they were seated with plates piled high with roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and fresh rolls. For a few minutes, they ate in comfortable silence, but then Nathan set down his fork and looked at her with those storm-gray eyes. "Can I ask you something that might be impolite?" Josephine braced herself. "You can ask. Why is a woman like you not married? And before you take offense, I do not mean that in the way the busybodies mean it. I mean, you are clearly intelligent, capable, and if you do not mind me saying, quite beautiful. So what is the real reason?" Josephine set her own fork down, considering how to answer. She could give him the polite surface reason. Instead, she found herself telling the truth. "When I was younger, I had proposals, 3 of them. One was from a man who only wanted my father's money and connections. One was from a man who was perfectly nice but whom I did not love. And one was from a man I might have loved, but he wanted a wife who would be content to sit at home and bear children and never have a thought of her own. I turned them all down because I believed I had time to find something real. Someone who saw me as a partner, not a possession or a solution to a problem. That does not sound unreasonable to me. Well, it was to everyone else. Then my parents died and the money was gone, and suddenly I was not such an attractive prospect anymore. The proposals stopped. The years passed. And now I am 33 years old and everyone in town thinks my life is over, that I am too old and set in my ways to ever find love or happiness." Nathan was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "My wife was 30 when we married. I was 35. Everyone said we were both too old to be starting out, that we had missed our chance. We had 20 good years together and would have had more if God had been willing. Those were the best years of my life, and they did not start until I was well past the age when most folks think life is supposed to be settled. That is different. You had those years. I have nothing. You have yourself, your independence, your skills, your strength. That is not nothing, Miss Palmer. That is more than a lot of people have." Josephine felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. "The town does not see it that way. Then maybe the town is wrong. Maybe what you need is not to prove anything to them, but to find someone who already sees your worth." He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of touching hers. "I am probably speaking out of turn here. We barely know each other, but I recognize something in you, Miss Palmer. A kindred spirit, maybe. Someone who knows what it is to be alone and to be judged for it." "What are you saying, Mr. Kelly?" "I am saying I would like to get to know you better. Court you properly if you are willing. I am not looking for a housekeeper or a nurse for my old age. I am looking for a partner, someone with their own thoughts and opinions, someone who chose independence because they valued it, not because they had no other options." He finally closed the distance, his fingers brushing against hers. "I am 46 years old and I know my own mind. I know what I want, and I would like a chance to see if what I want might include you." Josephine stared at their hands, barely touching on the table. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. This was madness. They had only just met. But there was something about Nathan Kelly that made her want to take a chance, to be brave, to believe that maybe her story was not over after all. "All right," she said softly. "I would like that too." His smile was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. "Good. That is very good." They finished their meal, talking about everything and nothing. Nathan told her about his ranch in Texas, the one he had sold after his wife died because everywhere he looked he saw her ghost. He told her about his decision to start fresh somewhere new, about finding the listing for the Murphy Ranch and knowing, somehow, that it was right even though everyone told him he was crazy. Josephine told him about her parents, about the shock of discovering her father's debts, about learning to support herself when she had been raised to expect a different kind of life. She told him about the loneliness of being an object of pity, about the way the town's dismissal had worn at her over the years. "They are wrong about you," Nathan said firmly, "and I aim to prove it to them. You do not need to fight my battles. Maybe not. But a partnership means standing together against the world when the world is being unfair. I think we could be good at that, you and I." Over the next weeks, Nathan became a constant presence in Josephine's life. He called on her properly, arriving at her door with flowers from the meadow on his property. They took walks together through town, ignoring the stares and whispers. He invited her to see the ranch, and she rode out on a borrowed horse to find him in the midst of renovations, turning the long, neglected buildings into something whole and functional again. The ranch house itself was a solid structure with good bones, and Nathan had plans to expand it, to add a larger kitchen and a proper sitting room. He walked her through his vision, describing each change with an enthusiasm that was contagious. She could see it too, the way it could be. The way it would be beautiful when he was finished. "What do you think?" he asked, standing in what would be the new sitting room. "Am I crazy to take on a project this big at my age? I think you are one of the bravest men I have ever met, and I think this place is going to be wonderful." He turned to her, his expression serious. "I need you to know something, Josephine. I'm not renovating this place just for myself. I am building it for a future. Our future, if you will have me." Her breath caught. "Nathan, we have only been courting for 3 weeks. I know. And if you need more time, I will give it to you. But I am old enough to know my own heart, and my heart knows what it wants. I want you. I want to build a life with you here. I want to prove to this whole damn town that they were wrong about both of us. What if they never accept us? What if the Cattlemen's Association runs you off? What if we fail? Then we will have failed together, which is better than succeeding alone." He took her hands in his. "I loved my wife, Josephine. I loved her deeply, and when she died, I thought I was done with love. I thought I would just live out my remaining years alone, going through the motions. But then I came here and I saw you on that street, and something in my heart woke back up. I am not replacing her. You could never replace her, and I am not asking you to try. But there is room in my heart for a new love, a different love. If you are brave enough to take a chance on an old rancher with more stubbornness than sense." Josephine looked up at him, at this man who had come into her life like a thunderstorm, sudden and powerful and impossible to ignore. She thought about all the years she had spent being careful, being sensible, protecting herself from more disappointment, and she thought about how tired she was of playing it safe. "I am brave enough," she said, "but you should know I come with my own stubbornness and my own opinions. And I will not be a silent partner, Nathan. If we do this, I am all in, equal partners in everything. I would not have it any other way." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. It was Josephine's first real kiss in over a decade, and it made her feel like a girl again, full of hope and possibility. When they broke apart, they were both smiling. "We are going to scandalize the town," Josephine said. "Good. It is about time someone shook things up around here." But the town proved to be more than just scandalizable. A week later, Nathan rode into La Junta with blood on his shirt and fury in his eyes. Josephine was hanging laundry when she heard the commotion and ran to the front of the house to find him dismounting in a quick, jerky movement that spoke of barely contained anger. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "I am fine. The blood is not mine. But someone shot at me while I was working on the north fence line. The bullet passed close enough that I could feel the heat of it. Then they shot my horse out from under me." Josephine felt ice flood her veins. "Your silver horse, is he all right?" "He will be." The bullet grazed his shoulder. "He made it back to the barn before he started favoring the leg. I got the vet out there and he says it will heal clean. But Josephine, they were trying to scare me off, or kill me. I am not sure which. You have to go to the sheriff." I did. "He says without witnesses or evidence, there is nothing he can do." And the way he said it, I got the feeling he is not exactly motivated to investigate too hard. Nathan ran a hand through his silver hair, disheveling it. "I am not giving up my land. I paid for it fair and square, and I have got the law on my side, but I will not lie to you. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Then we face it together." He looked at her, some of the anger draining from his face. "You could walk away. We have only been courting a month. No one would blame you for not wanting to tie yourself to a man with a target on his back." "I could, but I am not going to." Josephine stepped closer, taking his hand. "You were right when you said we are stronger together. Let them try to scare us. We will stand firm." Over the next weeks, the harassment intensified. Someone cut Nathan's fence lines 3 times. His cattle, which he had just purchased, were scattered across the countryside. He found his well poisoned and had to dig a new one. Someone set fire to his hay barn, destroying his winter feed stores. Through it all, Nathan refused to give up, and Josephine stood beside him. She helped him repair fences, her hands learning to work wire and posts. She rode with him to round up scattered cattle, discovering that she had a natural seat on a horse and a good eye for tracking. She became a fixture at the ranch, spending more time there than at her own house, until finally Nathan suggested she should just move in properly. "I know it is not done, an unmarried woman living with a man, but we are going to get married anyway, and I need you here. Not just want, need. You are the best partner I could ask for in getting this place running." "Yes," Josephine said simply. "Yes to moving in and yes to marrying you. The town already thinks the worst of us anyway. We might as well give them something real to talk about." They were married in Mrs. Chen's parlor on a crisp October morning, with only Mrs. Chen and the ranch hands Nathan had hired as witnesses. Josephine wore a simple cream dress she had made herself, and Nathan wore his black suit. And when Reverend Thompson pronounced them husband and wife, Josephine felt something settle in her chest that she had not even known was unsettled. She was 33 years old, and she had just married a 46-year-old rancher with disputed land and dangerous enemies. By all accounts, she should have felt worried or frightened. Instead, she felt like her life was finally beginning. The town's reaction was mixed. Some people, like Mrs. Chen, were genuinely happy for them. Others treated it as confirmation that Josephine had always been too particular and had finally settled for what she could get. Still others saw it as a scandal. An unmarried woman living alone with a man before the wedding, never mind that the wedding had followed quickly after. But there were also people who surprised her. Martha Henderson from the general store, who had spent years pitying her, came to the ranch with a gift, a beautiful quilt she had made herself. "I was wrong about you," Martha said simply. "I thought you were wasting your life, but you were just waiting for the right one. I hope you will be happy." It was not a full apology, but it was something, and Josephine accepted it in the spirit it was given. The Cattlemen's Association, however, remained hostile. They met in closed session and sent a delegation to the ranch. 3 men in expensive suits who looked at Nathan and Josephine like they were squatters instead of legal landowners. "Mr. Kelly, we are prepared to make you a generous offer for your land," the leader, a man named Richard Stanton, said. 20% above what you paid for it. That is a good profit for only a few months of ownership. Not interested. Be reasonable. You have been attacked, your property vandalized, your livestock scattered. Do you really want to put your new wife through more of that? Sell now, take the profit, and move on. Find somewhere easier to make a life. Nathan's jaw tightened. I said no. Mr. Kelly, you do not seem to understand. We are trying to help you. Things could get much worse. That was when Josephine stepped forward. She had been standing in the doorway, listening, and now she moved to stand beside Nathan, presenting a united front. Is that a threat, Mr. Stanton? It is a statement of fact, Mrs. Kelly. This is cattle country, and the Cattlemen's Association controls the water rights. If your husband insists on staying, he will find it very difficult to do business. Actually, Mr. Stanton, Miller Creek runs right through the middle of our property. We control access to it, not you. And I have been reading the water rights settlement very carefully. It states quite clearly that my husband has the right to reasonable use of the water and cannot be prevented from allowing others to access it. What it does not say is that he is required to grant access. So if the association continues to harass us, we could simply fence off our portion of the creek and force everyone else to find other water sources. I believe the nearest reliable water is about 15 miles west. Is that right? The 3 men stared at her. Stanton's face turned an ugly shade of red. You would not dare. Try us, Josephine said calmly. We did not come here looking for a fight, but we will not be driven off our own land. Leave us in peace and we will be good neighbors. Continue the harassment, and you will discover just how stubborn 2 old fools can be. The delegation left shortly after, and Nathan pulled Josephine into his arms, laughing. Did you see their faces? They had no idea what hit them. I meant every word. If they come after us again, we fence off the creek. That would hurt us too. We need the goodwill of our neighbors. Then maybe our neighbors should start acting neighborly. We have been here 5 months, Nathan. 5 months of being shot at and sabotaged and threatened. I am done being afraid. We are in the right, legally and morally. Let them back down for once. Nathan kissed her soundly. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Not in the last hour. I love you. You are fierce and brave and brilliant, and I am the luckiest man alive. The threat of cutting off creek access proved effective. The harassment stopped, at least the overt kind. There were still people who would not do business with them, still people who crossed the street to avoid speaking to them. But the violence ended, and that was enough for now. As winter settled over Colorado, Nathan and Josephine settled into married life. The ranch house renovations were complete, and it was a warm, welcoming space. Josephine had contributed her own touches, curtains she had sewn and furniture she had helped refinish. It was their home, built together, and she loved every inch of it. They worked side by side through the short winter days, feeding cattle and repairing equipment and planning for spring. Nathan taught her about ranching, and she taught him about keeping accounts and managing household supplies. They were partners in the truest sense, each bringing their own strengths to the marriage. At night they sat by the fire, and Nathan would read aloud while Josephine mended or knitted. Sometimes they just talked, sharing stories of their pasts, dreams for their future. Nathan told her about his late wife, Emily, and the love they had shared. It did not make Josephine jealous. Instead, it made her love him more, knowing he had such capacity for devotion. Emily would have liked you, he said one night. She always said I needed someone who could stand up to me. Someone with backbone. I wish I could have known her. Me too. But I think somehow she would be happy knowing I found love again. She made me promise near the end that I would not spend the rest of my life alone. I told her I could not imagine loving anyone else, and she said that was because I was being stubborn as usual. She was right, as always. Josephine leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. I love you, Nathan, not as a replacement for what you lost, but as something new. Something ours. I know. And I love you the same way. You are not a consolation prize, Josephine. You are the best thing that has happened to me in years. Coming to La Junta, buying this ranch, meeting you, it all feels like it was meant to be. Spring came, and with it came a thaw in more than just the weather. The Cattlemen's Association, facing pressure from their own members who were tired of the conflict, finally acknowledged Nathan's legal right to his land. It was not exactly a warm welcome, but it was acceptance of sorts. They even invited him to join the association, an olive branch that Nathan accepted with the understanding that Josephine would be attending all meetings with him. She is my partner in all things, he told them. If you want me, you get both of us. Some of the older members grumbled, but in the end, they agreed. Josephine became the first woman to attend Cattlemen's Association meetings, and she made sure her presence was felt. She had ideas about water conservation and land management that were ahead of their time, and gradually, grudgingly, the other ranchers began to listen. In town, attitudes shifted as well. Josephine had always been capable, but now people saw her in a new light. She was not poor Josephine anymore, the old maid to be pitied. She was Mrs. Kelly, a respected rancher's wife and a force to be reckoned with. When she walked down Main Street with Nathan beside her, people nodded respectfully instead of whispering behind their hands. One afternoon, she ran into Mayor Hoskins outside the general store. He tipped his hat, looking slightly embarrassed. "Mrs. Kelly, I hope you and your husband are settling in well." "We are, Mayor. Thank you for asking." I must admit I had my doubts at first. About Mr. Kelly's claim to the land, and about whether he would be able to make it work. But I can see now that I was wrong. You are both assets to our community. It was not quite an apology for the harassment they had endured, but it was close enough. Josephine accepted it with grace and moved on. She had learned that holding grudges only hurt the person holding them, and she was too happy now to waste energy on old wounds. Summer arrived in a blaze of heat and activity. The ranch was thriving, the cattle were healthy, and Nathan had expanded into horse breeding as well, using his magnificent silver stallion as the foundation of a new line. Josephine discovered she had a gift for working with the horses, a patience and intuition that the animals responded to. "You are a natural," Nathan said, watching her gentle a skittish mare. "Have you ever thought about making this your focus? We could build a real horse breeding operation here. I thought you wanted to focus on cattle. I want us to focus on whatever makes us happy and successful. If you have a passion for horses, then we should pursue it. Together." They were talking about expansion plans when Josephine realized she had missed her monthly course. She had been so busy that she had not even noticed, but now, counting back, she realized she was nearly 2 months late. Her heart began to pound. She was 34 years old, married less than a year. She had assumed that children were not in her future, that she was too old. But apparently, she was not too old after all. She waited another week to be sure, and then she told Nathan one evening after supper. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains, and she simply took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby," she said softly. Nathan went very still. For a moment, she worried she had miscalculated his reaction, that maybe he did not want more children at his age. Then he turned to her, and there were tears streaming down his weathered face. A baby. Josephine, are you certain as I can be without seeing a doctor? But all the signs are there. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Emily and I tried for years. We wanted children so badly, but it never happened. I thought that door was closed for me. And now you are telling me that at 47 years old I am going to be a father. If you want to be. If you are ready for that. Want to be. Josephine, I have never wanted anything more in my life. You have given me so much already, a second chance at love, a true partnership, a home. And now a child. I do not know what I did to deserve you, but I thank God for it every day. They went to see Dr. Morrison in town the next week, and he confirmed what Josephine already knew. She was pregnant, about 10 weeks along if his calculations were correct. The baby would arrive in early February. At your age, there are some risks, Dr. Morrison said gently. You will need to take care of yourself, not overdo it, but I see no reason to think you cannot have a healthy pregnancy and delivery. I am 34, not 50, Josephine said firmly. Women my age have babies all the time. Of course. I just want you to be aware and cautious. Come see me once a month and we will make sure everything is progressing well. As Josephine's pregnancy advanced, she found that the town's attitude toward her completed its transformation. Women who had pitied her or gossiped about her now stopped to ask how she was feeling, to offer advice, to share their own pregnancy stories. It was as if by becoming a mother, she had finally achieved the respectability that had eluded her as a single woman. Martha Henderson knitted tiny blankets and sweaters. Mrs. Chen cooked special meals designed to keep up Josephine's strength. Even the members of the Cattlemen's Association, those stern-faced men who had tried to run Nathan off his land, congratulated him on his impending fatherhood and clapped him on the back like he was one of them now. It is funny, Josephine said to Nathan one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her growing belly. All these years, the town told me I was too old, too set in my ways, too particular, but I was not too old. I was just waiting for the right time. For you. They were wrong about both of us, and I am glad you did not listen to them. I am glad you stayed true to yourself until we found each other. The baby kicked, a strong flutter against Nathan's palm, and they both laughed. This one is going to be stubborn, I can tell already, Nathan said. Good. Stubborn runs in both our families now. This child does not stand a chance of being anything else. As winter approached again, Josephine slowed down, allowing Nathan to take on more of the physical ranch work. It chafed at her to be less active, but she also knew the doctor was right about being cautious. This baby was a miracle she had not dared hope for, and she would do nothing to risk it. She spent the short winter days working on the nursery, a small room off the master bedroom that they had decided would be perfect. She sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her stitches as neat and careful as ever. Nathan built a beautiful cradle from oak, carving designs into the headboard. They were nesting, preparing for the new life that would soon join theirs. On a frigid February morning, just as dawn was breaking over the mountains, Josephine woke to the first pains. She lay still for a moment, breathing through the contraction, then reached over to shake Nathan awake. It is time. Nathan was out of bed instantly, pulling on clothes and boots. I will go get the doctor. Mrs. Chen said she would come to help. Are you all right? Do you need anything? I need you to calm down and breathe. We have time. First babies take a while or so, everyone keeps telling me. But Nathan was already racing out the door, and Josephine had to laugh despite the pain. He had been so calm through everything else, facing down the Cattlemen's Association and armed attackers without flinching. But the prospect of becoming a father had reduced him to a nervous wreck. Mrs. Chen arrived first, bustling in with supplies and a calm competence that Josephine found deeply reassuring. Dr. Morrison arrived shortly after, with Nathan hovering anxiously behind him. "I am going to have to ask you to wait outside, Mr. Kelly," the doctor said. "Let Mrs. Chen and me handle this. But she is my wife, I should be with her. It is not proper and it is no place for a man. Go downstairs. Pace if you must. We will call you when the baby arrives." Nathan looked at Josephine, who nodded. "Go, I will be fine. Mrs. Chen is here." He kissed her forehead and reluctantly left. Josephine could hear his boots on the stairs, then pacing back and forth in the room below. Despite the pain that was building with each contraction, she smiled. He loved her so much, and soon they would have a child together, a tangible symbol of that love. The labor was long and hard. Josephine had known it would be difficult, but knowing and experiencing were two different things. She focused on breathing, on the encouraging words from Mrs. Chen, on the knowledge that women had been doing this since the beginning of time. She was strong. She could do this. As the sun set and rose again, painting the room in shades of gold and pink, Josephine gave one final push and heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby crying. Dr. Morrison worked quickly, and then he was placing a small, squalling bundle in her arms. "It is a boy, Mrs. Kelly, a healthy, strong boy." Josephine looked down at the tiny red face, the shock of dark hair, the waving fists, her son. She and Nathan had created this perfect little person. Tears streamed down her face as she marveled at him. "Let me clean him up and then we can bring in your husband," Dr. Morrison said. A few minutes later, Nathan burst through the door and Josephine could see that he had been crying. "Josephine, are you all right? Is the baby all right?" "We are both fine. Come meet your son." Nathan approached the bed slowly, reverently, as if afraid he might break the spell. When he looked down at the baby in Josephine's arms, his face transformed with wonder. "Our son. We have a son. Would you like to hold him?" Nathan took the baby with surprising confidence, cradling him against his chest. The baby stopped fussing immediately, settling into his father's arms as if he belonged there. "Hello, little one. I am your father. I am going to love you and protect you and teach you everything I know. And your mother is going to teach you even more because she is the smartest person I have ever met." "What should we name him?" Josephine asked. They had discussed names but had not settled on anything definite. Now, looking at Nathan holding their son, Josephine knew exactly what felt right. "What was your father's name?" James Kelly, "and my grandfather was Nathan, which is where I got my name." "Then what about James Nathan? He can carry both legacies forward." "James Nathan Kelly, that is perfect." Nathan looked down at the baby. "Welcome to the world, James. You have no idea how loved you already are." The first few weeks with a newborn were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Josephine discovered reserves of strength she had not known she possessed, surviving on little sleep and learning to feed and care for this tiny person who depended on them for everything. Nathan was a devoted father, taking his turn walking the floor with James in the middle of the night, changing diapers without complaint, marveling at every tiny sound and movement. "I never thought I would have this," he said one night, holding James while Josephine rested. "I had given up on the idea of being a father, and now here he is and I cannot imagine life without him. We made him together, this little miracle that the town said we were too old for. The town can go hang. We proved them all wrong. You are not too old for anything, Josephine. You are perfect exactly as you are." As James grew, the ranch prospered. Nathan's horse breeding operation took off, with buyers coming from as far away as Denver to purchase his stock. Josephine managed the business side, keeping meticulous records and negotiating deals that impressed even the hardest-headed ranchers. They were a team in every sense, partners in marriage, business, and parenthood. When James was 6 months old, Josephine discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she was not surprised, just delighted. Dr. Morrison shook his head in amazement. "Mrs. Kelly, you are a wonder. I have never seen a woman your age have such easy fertility." "I am 35, doctor, not ancient. And apparently, my body disagrees with everyone who said I was too old for marriage and motherhood." Their second son, Thomas William, arrived in November, an easier birth than James had been. He had Nathan's gray eyes and Josephine's dark hair, and James, now walking and chattering, was fascinated by his baby brother. The town's transformation in their regard was complete. Nathan and Josephine Kelly were now pillars of the community, respected ranchers and parents. When they attended church, people saved them seats. When they came to town, storekeepers greeted them warmly. The younger women in town, those facing their own pressure to marry, looked at Josephine as proof that it was never too late, that holding out for real love was worthwhile. Martha Henderson came to visit when Thomas was a few weeks old, bringing another beautiful quilt. "I wanted to apologize properly," she said. "I spent years pitying you, thinking your life was wasted, but you were not wasting anything. You were waiting, and you were building yourself into someone strong enough to be an equal partner to a man like Nathan. I see that now, and I am sorry I did not see it sooner." "Thank you, Martha. That means a lot. You have given hope to a lot of women in this town. The ones who are told they are too particular or too independent. You have shown them that those qualities are not flaws. They are strengths." After Martha left, Josephine stood by the window, looking out at the ranch that she and Nathan had built together. Beyond the house, she could see cattle grazing peacefully, horses running in the paddock, and Nathan walking with James on his shoulders, pointing out birds and explaining the world to their curious son. She thought about the woman she had been 5 years ago, 33 and resigned to a life of solitude and judgment. That woman would not have believed this future was possible. But it was more than possible. It was real. She had a husband who loved and respected her as an equal. She had 2 beautiful sons. She had a home and a thriving business. She had respect from a community that had once pitied her. But more than any of that, she had proven to herself that the town had been wrong. She had not been too old or too set in her ways or too particular. She had been exactly who she needed to be, strong enough to wait for what she deserved, brave enough to take a chance when it came, and capable enough to build a life that exceeded her wildest dreams. Nathan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back against his chest. James had apparently been deposited with Mrs. Chen for the afternoon. "What are you thinking about? How happy I am. How grateful I am that you came to La Junta that day. How different my life might have been if you had not. I am the one who should be grateful. I was just drifting after Emily died, going through the motions. You gave me a reason to really live again. You and James and Thomas, you are my whole world." Josephine turned in his arms, looking up at the silver-haired man who had proven the town wrong about both of them. "Do you remember what you said to me the first time we really talked? You said maybe what I needed was not to prove anything to the town, but to find someone who already saw my worth." "I remember. You saw it from the beginning, before I had even convinced myself. Thank you for that, for seeing me. Always, Josephine, I will always see you exactly as you are, my partner, my love, my wife." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of the love they had built together, and Josephine felt a contentment so deep it was like coming home. She had been 33 years old when Nathan Kelly rode into La Junta on his silver horse, and the town had already written her story's ending. But she had written a new beginning instead, and it had turned out better than any fairy tale. The years flowed by like Miller Creek running through their land, steady and life-giving. James grew into a confident boy with Nathan's quiet strength and Josephine's sharp mind. Thomas was more boisterous, always getting into mischief, but with a heart as big as the Colorado sky. They worked the ranch alongside their parents as soon as they were old enough, learning the value of hard work and partnership. When Josephine was 38, she gave birth to a daughter, Grace Emily, named for both their mothers. Nathan cried when the doctor handed him his daughter, overcome with emotion. "3 children," he said in wonder. "At my age, I have 3 children. How did I get so lucky?" "We got lucky," Josephine corrected. "Together." Grace was a daddy's girl from the start, following Nathan everywhere she could toddle, but she also inherited her mother's independence and determination. By the time she was 5, she was demanding to learn to ride and work cattle just like her brothers, and neither Nathan nor Josephine saw any reason to deny her. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Nathan's horses became known throughout the territory for their quality and temperament. Josephine expanded into breaking and training as well, developing techniques that were more humane than the harsh methods most men used. She became known as someone who could gentle even the most difficult horse, and people brought their problem animals to her from miles around. The Cattlemen's Association eventually made Josephine a full member in her own right, not just as Nathan's wife. She was the first woman to hold that distinction, and she used her position to push for better conservation practices and more equitable water sharing. Not everyone agreed with her ideas, but everyone respected her knowledge and her results. When Nathan turned 55, James 18, Thomas 12, and Grace 7, they threw a party at the ranch. It seemed like half of La Junta showed up, along with ranchers and friends from neighboring towns. Looking around at the crowd of people eating and laughing and celebrating, Josephine marveled at how much had changed. She found Nathan standing by the paddock fence, watching the horses run. She slipped her hand into his and he squeezed it gently. "Happy birthday," she said. "It is a good birthday, probably the best I have ever had, surrounded by family and friends on land that is truly ours with a woman I love more every day. You know what I was thinking about? What is that? That first day you came to La Junta. When you stood in the middle of Main Street and refused to be intimidated by the mayor and the Cattlemen's Association. I was just another face in the crowd, but you noticed me. How could I not notice you? You were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, standing there in the afternoon sun with a laundry basket on your hip and fire in your eyes. I knew right then that you were special. I did not know yet that you would become my whole world, but I knew you were someone I wanted to know." "I was so scared," Josephine admitted. "When you asked to court me, I was terrified. Terrified that it would not work out, that I would end up even more alone than before. Terrified that the town was right and I was too old and too difficult. But you took the chance anyway. Because you made me brave. You saw me as I was and loved me for it, not in spite of it. That was something I had never experienced before." Nathan turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "Josephine Kelly, you are the bravest, strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever known. You took a risk on a silver-haired stranger with disputed land and dangerous enemies. You stood beside me through attacks and harassment. You built a business and a family. You changed an entire town's mind about what was possible. You did all that, not me. I just had the good sense to see your worth and hold on tight. We did it together. That is what partnership means." From across the yard they heard Grace calling for them. "Mama, Papa, come on. Uncle Timothy brought his fiddle and he is going to play." Hand in hand, they walked back to join the party, their children and friends and the community that had once rejected them, but now embraced them fully. As the music started and people began to dance, Nathan pulled Josephine into his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing like the young people they felt like inside. "The town called you too old for marriage," Nathan said into her ear. "But look at us now. Married 13 years, 3 children, a thriving ranch, and more love than most people find in a lifetime. I would say we proved them spectacularly wrong. We did we not? And it just keeps getting better." Years continued to pass, bringing changes both big and small. James grew into a fine young man and took over more of the ranch operations, allowing Nathan to slow down slightly. He courted and eventually married a schoolteacher from Denver, a smart woman named Catherine who fit into the family perfectly. Thomas went off to college in Boulder, studying business and economics, planning to come back and help expand the ranch's operations even further. Grace remained stubbornly independent, insisting she would run her own ranch someday, not just help with her parents' operation. "She is just like you," Nathan told Josephine with amusement, "determined to prove she can do anything. And she will, just like I did, just like we did together." When Josephine turned 45, they held a quieter celebration, just family and close friends. She looked around the table at her grown and growing children, at her daughter-in-law and the grandchild Catherine was expecting, at Nathan with his silver hair now liberally streaked with white, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. After dinner, as the younger people were cleaning up, Nathan took her hand and led her out to the porch. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. They sat in the rocking chairs they had bought years ago, holding hands and watching the light fade. "You ever wonder what your life would have been like if I had never come to La Junta?" Nathan asked. "Sometimes. I think I would have managed. I was managing before you came. But I would not have been truly happy. I would not have known what I was missing. I was so lost after Emily died. I did not think I could ever feel whole again. Then I saw you, and something in me recognized something in you." Two people who had been told their best days were behind them, proving that sometimes the best is yet to come. "The town thought I was too old at 33. Imagine what they would have said if they knew I would have my first child at 34, my second at 35, my third at 38. That I would build a successful business and become a respected member of the community. That I would find a love deeper and truer than anything I could have imagined in my youth. They were wrong about everything, about you, about us, about what is possible when two people who know their own minds find each other." Josephine squeezed his hand. "I love you, Nathan Kelly. I have loved you since that first Sunday dinner at Mrs. Chen's, when you asked if I was brave enough to take a chance on a stubborn old rancher. And I have loved you since I first saw you on Main Street, independent and strong and so beautiful it made my heart ache. I will love you until my last breath, Josephine, and beyond, if such things are possible." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge one by one in the darkening sky. From inside the house came the sound of laughter, of their children and Catherine talking and joking. The ranch around them was quiet, the cattle settled for the night, the horses dozing in their stalls. Everything was peaceful, everything was as it should be. "We did good, did we not?" Josephine said softly. "Building this life, raising these children, proving everyone wrong. We did better than good. We did extraordinary, and we did it together, which is the only way it could have worked." More years passed, bringing more grandchildren and more changes. The ranch became one of the most successful in the territory, known for quality horses and cattle and innovative practices. Josephine published articles in agricultural journals about her horse training methods, becoming something of an expert whose advice was sought from across the West. Nathan slowed down more as age caught up with him, but he remained active and involved, still the steady presence at the center of their family. When Nathan turned 65 and Josephine 52, they decided to take a trip, something they had never done, just the two of them. James was more than capable of managing the ranch, and Grace, now 20, was there to help. They traveled to San Francisco, taking the train and staying in a fine hotel, and seeing the ocean for the first time. Standing on the beach, holding hands and watching the waves crash against the shore, Josephine thought about the journey they had taken together. From that first meeting on a dusty street in La Junta to this moment on the edge of the continent, it had been a remarkable ride. "Do you have any regrets?" she asked Nathan. He thought about it seriously before answering. "I regret that I did not meet you sooner, that we did not have more years together. But I do not regret a single moment of the years we have had. Every day with you has been a gift, even the hard days. The days when we were being shot at and sabotaged, even those, because we faced them together and they made us stronger. They proved what we were capable of when we stood united. I do not have any regrets either, not about waiting for the right person, not about taking a chance on you. Not about any of it. My only sadness is that we will not have forever." Nathan pulled her close. "Then we had better make the most of the time we do have, starting right now." They returned to La Junta refreshed and closer than ever. The ranch continued to thrive, now spanning several thousand acres and employing a dozen men year-round. James and Catherine had 4 children who delighted in spending time with their grandparents. Thomas came home after finishing his education and helped expand the business into new markets. Grace, true to her word, bought a neighboring ranch with her own saved money and ran it with impressive skill. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the family threw a grand celebration. Friends and neighbors came from all over the territory. Even some of the old-timers from the Cattlemen's Association, the ones who had tried to run Nathan off all those years ago, came to pay their respects and admit they had been wrong. Richard Stanton, now in his 70s and long retired from active ranching, pulled Nathan aside. "I owe you an apology. Hell, I owe both of you an apology. We were wrong to try to force you out. You proved that competition makes everyone better. The ranching practices you and your wife developed, the way you manage water resources, the quality of your stock, it raised the bar for all of us. We are all more successful because of what you brought to this area. I appreciate that, Richard. It means a lot. That wife of yours, she is something special. We all thought she was a spinster, too old and too particular. Turns out she was just waiting for someone worthy of her. You are a lucky man. I am reminded of that every single day." The party lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and storytelling. When Josephine and Nathan finally found a quiet moment alone, they stood on their porch looking out at the ranch they had built together, the family they had created, the life they had forged from nothing but determination and love. 25 years, Josephine said. Half my life now, I have been your wife, and they have been the best years I could have imagined. 25 years since a scared woman took a chance on a silver-haired stranger. 25 years since we decided to prove the whole town wrong. I would say we succeeded. We did more than succeed. We thrived. We loved. We built something lasting. Nathan wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood together in the darkness, comfortable and content. I love you, Josephine Kelly. Thank you for being brave enough to see past what everyone told you was impossible. I love you too, Nathan. Thank you for seeing my worth when I had almost stopped seeing it myself. The years continued their steady march. Nathan reached 70, then 72, and his health began to decline. Nothing dramatic, just the natural wearing down of a body that had worked hard for decades. He spent more time in his rocking chair, less time on horseback, but his mind remained sharp, and his love for Josephine never wavered. On a spring morning when Nathan was 74 and Josephine 61, she woke to find him struggling to breathe. She sent James racing for the doctor, but even before Dr. Morrison arrived, she knew. Nathan's heart was giving out, worn down by time and work and life fully lived. Dr. Morrison did what he could, but there was nothing to be done. Nathan was dying, and they all knew it. The family gathered, children and grandchildren crowding into the bedroom to say goodbye. But after each had their turn, Nathan asked for time alone with Josephine. She sat on the bed beside him, holding his hand, memorizing every line of his beloved face. "You are not allowed to leave me," she said, tears streaming down her face. "We have a deal. We are supposed to grow old together." "We did grow old together, my love. We had 29 years. That is more than many people get. More than I had with Emily, and I was grateful for those years. But these years with you, they were the crown of my life. You made me happier than I ever thought possible. I do not want to lose you. You will never lose me. I will always be with you. In the ranch we built, in our children and grandchildren, in every fence post and water trough and horse in the paddock. This place is made of both of us. When I am gone, I will still be here. What am I supposed to do without you?" Nathan reached up with a trembling hand to wipe away her tears. "You are going to keep living. Keep running this ranch. Keep showing everyone what an extraordinary woman you are. Keep proving that age is just a number and that it is never too late for anything. You did not need me to be strong, Josephine. You were always strong. I was just lucky enough to walk beside you. You made me brave. You made me believe in myself. No, my love, I just helped you see what was always there. You were always brave, always brilliant, always worthy. I just had the good sense to recognize it." They talked through the day as Nathan's breathing grew more labored. He told her again how much he loved her, how grateful he was for every moment they had shared. He made her promise to keep living fully, to not let grief consume her the way it had consumed him after Emily died. As the sun began to set, painting the room in the same golden light that had illuminated their first kiss all those years ago, Nathan's breathing slowed. He looked at Josephine with eyes full of love and squeezed her hand one last time. "Best decision I ever made," he whispered. "Coming to La Junta, finding you. Best decision I ever made was saying yes. I love you, Josephine, always have, always will. I love you too, Nathan, so much, more than words can say." He smiled, that beautiful smile that had first made her heart skip, and then his eyes closed. His breathing stopped, and Nathan Kelly, the silver-haired rancher who had ridden into town 29 years ago and changed everything, was gone. Josephine sat with him for a long time, holding his hand, talking to him even though she knew he could not hear. She told him about all the things she still wanted to do, all the plans she would have to carry out alone now. She promised to take care of the ranch and their children and grandchildren. She promised to keep living, to honor his memory by continuing to be the strong, independent woman he had always seen her as. The funeral was one of the largest La Junta had ever seen. People came from across the territory to pay their respects to a man who had been respected and loved by so many. But through it all, Josephine stood dry-eyed and strong, because that was what Nathan would have wanted. After everyone had left and the house was quiet, she went to sit in her rocking chair on the porch, in the spot where they had spent countless evenings together. Grace came out to sit with her. "Are you all right, Mama? I will be, eventually. Right now it hurts more than I thought possible, but your father was right. I am strong enough to survive this. You and Papa, you had something special. Everyone could see it. We did. We had a love that proved everyone wrong. The town said I was too old for marriage at 33, but I had 29 years with the best man I ever knew. I had 3 children and 8 grandchildren. I built a successful ranch and a respected business. I had a life full of love and purpose. The town was wrong about everything. Grace squeezed her hand. You are my hero, Mama. You showed me that I do not have to fit into anyone's expectations but my own, that I can be strong and independent and still find love, that it is never too late to start over. Your father taught me that. He was 46 when we met, starting over after losing his first wife. I was 33 and convinced my life was already settled, but we found each other and we built something beautiful. Remember that, Grace. It is never too late. Not for love, not for dreams, not for anything. The weeks and months that followed were hard. Josephine missed Nathan with an ache that never quite went away, but she kept her promise to him. She kept running the ranch, kept training horses, kept being active in the Cattlemen's Association. She spent time with her children and grandchildren, sharing stories of their father and grandfather, keeping his memory alive. On what would have been their 30th anniversary, Josephine rode out to the spot where Nathan had first shown her the ranch, where they had stood together and planned their future. She sat on a rock overlooking Miller Creek, watching the water flow past, and she talked to him as if he were still there. We did it, Nathan. We proved them all wrong. I was not too old. We were not too old. We had nearly 30 years of love and partnership, and they were the best years of my life. I miss you every day, but I am still here, still living fully, still being the woman you always believed I could be. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for proving that it is never, ever too late. The wind whispered through the grass, and for a moment, Josephine could almost feel Nathan's presence beside her. She stayed there until the sun began to set, then rode back to the ranch house that still echoed with the life they had built together. Years continued to pass. Josephine remained active and involved well into her 70s, finally slowing down only when her own health demanded it. She lived to see all 8 grandchildren grow into capable, independent adults. She lived to meet her first great-grandchild, a baby girl named Josephine in her honor. When she was 82 years old, sitting in her rocking chair on the porch and surrounded by 4 generations of family, Josephine felt content. She had lived a long, full life. She had loved and been loved. She had proven that age and expectations meant nothing in the face of determination and courage. As the sun set over the mountains one final time, Josephine closed her eyes and felt Nathan's presence so strongly it was as if he were sitting in the chair beside her, holding her hand like they had done for so many years. "I am coming home," she whispered. "Wait for me, my love." And with a smile on her face and love in her heart, Josephine Palmer Kelly took her last breath, content in the knowledge that she had lived fully, loved deeply, and proved every single doubt wrong. The town had called her too old for marriage at 33, but a silver-haired rancher had seen her true worth, and together they had built a legacy that would last for generations. Their story became legend in La Junta, told and retold to young women who worried they were running out of time, to anyone who thought their best years were behind them. It became a reminder that it is never too late to find love, to start over, to build something beautiful. That age is just a number, and the only timeline that matters is your own. The ranch remained in the family, passed down through James and eventually to his children. The Kelly name became synonymous with quality and integrity in ranching circles. And on the mantel in the main house, there sat a photograph of Nathan and Josephine on their wedding day, silver-haired and dark-haired, standing together with love shining in their eyes and determination in their faces. two people who had refused to accept the limitations others tried to place on them. Below the photograph, engraved on a small brass plate, were the words, "It is never too late.